So I welcome you all for the day 4 of Atal FTP on textile design. Today we are having with us as a first speaker Dr. Rita Khan, a senior faculty at University Institute of Fashion Technology and Vocational Development, Punjab University, Chandigarh. She is having more than 60 research papers published in national and international journal and has also contributed chapters in 4 books. Her research work is cited in databases like Scopus, Sage, ResearchGate, Google Scholar, and academia.edu. A couple of these research papers have as many as 400 citations. There are 50 research papers presented in national and international conferences in India, Thailand, Singapore, and United States of America. She has also received a Certificate of Excellence Award for reviewing paper in peer-reviewed international journal and also edited a book on inventive techniques for reuse of discarded textile material. There are 2 books under publications of her. One is on the emerging mall culture and visual merchandising, and second one is to upcycling a textile material. She has also she's also have 2 PhD scholars currently under her, and 9 of the PhD scholars have worked with her, and now they have the doctorate degree. She is having one patent design and 2 registered designs for on her name, and have completed 3 training consultancy projects, and also a consultant for a brand Barry Home, a US-based company for bed lining products, currently working on a project funded by Cambridge University, UK. So she will be delivering today's lecture on cleaner production of textile material. It's our privilege to have you with us, ma'am. So now let us start with the presentation. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Um, First of all, good morning to all the participants and the organizers of this program. And I'm really happy to be here and grateful that I have been given the opportunity to talk about a topic which is close to my heart. And I would like to share whatever knowledge I have on the subject. And I would say that even if you take away 10 sentences, 10% of what I say, it'll be wonderful. It'll be goal achieved because you are already senior teachers and you already know everything. You know a lot. So you might find all this information that I share with you very familiar. Oh, I know about it. But this is just a warm-up exercise. And if I'm able to give you 10 sentences which you had not heard about, that'll be, really a happy moment for me. So let's begin with this butterfly effect. Of course, it is a metaphor, but we know that a little action, a little movement can make a huge difference. Just like the fluttering wings of a butterfly can bring about a tornado. When we do our calculations and statistics, a 0.01% of a difference can change the results greatly. So this is just to, set you thinking of what we are expected to do in terms of cleaner production of textiles. So I go to the next slide from here, and how do I do that? So the topic, cleaner production of textile materials, sustainable and unconventional methods. I would be talking about a 4-pillar approach, or I would like you to think about it. How to slow down production, and what are the things we must keep in mind to slow down production. That is, be sustainable, be sociable, be skillable, be scalable. So if you are, whatever you're going to do, whatever you're going to use or produce, or, do a project, or, it should be something sustainable where you are saving the resources and you are helping the society. It is sociable. Preferably it should be based on a skill that they know about, so that they can use their own skills to uplift their income and their living. And it should be scalable. If whatever you have done, a project you're doing in your small area, it should be scalable and should be you should be able to replicate it in other places. So broadly, these are the areas. So look at this slide. We are all victims of fashion, because we are, we just go too much into fashion without thinking about it. Whereas fashion is supposed to be, or is a fashion statement, but we just look around us and we do what others are doing for the fear of being left behind or fear of missing out on things. So we are victims of hoarding. We are victims of fast food, if I can say. We are victims of consumption. So this is what we have to really give a thought to. We often come across, such conversations that, oh, you know how much I got it for? It's so cheap, right? A great deal. That was a great deal, right? I got things so cheap. I got a pack of 3 at that price. Wow. Uh, Advertisements like buy one, get 2 free, discount coupons available, buy 3 at the price of 2, 50% off, and we get carried away and we just want to do the same thing what uh, our neighbors, our friends have done, or what what we see on the billboards. Look at that cute ad, pay less to dress. So market is tempting us all the time. Uh, Now here's slide number 1, where it's written because you can never figure out where to put long hair. So this is a fashion victim story. Look at the loaded cupboard. Look at the girl, with so many clothes on her. You're not going to wear all that, but we want more and more, more and more. Overconsumption is a problem of this period and time. So we are all heading towards, you know, if I may say so, destruction. So let's talk about some facts and figures. The textile and clothing industry, you've all heard about it several times, that it has an important role to play in the Indian economy. And it is second to agriculture in generating employment. And 55 million people are directly engaged. 60 million are engaged in the allied industries. It contributes 4% to the GDP and 12% to the export basket. We keep hearing these figures. We teach it to our students, all the time. Let me just go back to the slide. How do I go back? Because this slide was not meant to be. Yeah. Okay. So there is increasing demand in the domestic market also, and there is of course increasing orders and export orders and order work that we are doing all over the world. There is an increasing demand of clothing and textiles, and domestically also it is increasing because per capita income of our country is increasing. There are a large number of young population that we have, and we are very fashion conscious. And with the world opening up so much through media, we come in contact with through YouTube and influencers. We see what is happening in the developed countries, and we just ape it, and we have the money to spend on those things. So the unique feature of the textile industry is in India is that it is a decentralized sector. And because it is a decentralized sector, it needs a lot of research and development, because it needs a lot of intervention. It needs a lot of action for sustainability, right? This is where the role of the faculty and the students comes in, because we know that our country is rich in traditional textiles, which have been pushed into the background, and all that is being done is order work for developed countries. Whereas, you can do a lot as far as your own traditional textiles are concerned, but because the skilled people who are the spinners and the weavers, they do not have so much, deep knowledge about designs and color combinations and themes, etc. So we can intervene over there and we can help them generate, preserve the tradition and generate a good living for themselves. Coming back to facts and figures, the global fiber production in 2019 reached 111 million tons, and it is expected to grow to 146 million metric tons by 2030. Out of this fiber production, of course, there are two broad categories, natural and synthetic fibers. Now, synthetic fibers include polyester, nylon, acrylic, and a few others. Natural fibers we know, cotton, wool, silk, etc. Now, the synthetic fiber production is almost 70%, 69% to be exact, of the total fiber production, right? So that means just 30% is natural fibers and 69, 70% is the synthetic fibers. And out of these synthetic fibers, 70%, 98% is 95% is polyester, which is the most harmful of the fibers. And we do not realize that in our day-to-day living. Synthetic fibers, they pose a great environmental concern, environmental threat. Um, we utilize almost 98 million tons of oil resources globally every year in production of these fibers. We know that they are dependent on fossil fuel. We know that they are not biodegradable. We know that they are micron-sized things, micron-sized particles, which are very detrimental to the human health because we can just inhale them, right? They can just go into our respiratory system like that. They are in the atmosphere all the time. Of course, there is carbon dioxide emission in the preparation, in the production of these fibers. It's there in production of natural fibers also, but then, this one is more harmful. So we have to make a choice about what to choose over synthetics. Now, the textile production consumes approximately 93 cubic meters of water every year. There's so much consumption of water, and you can imagine that you can fill up 37 million Olympic swimming pools. Yeah.
Ma'am, someone is saying in the chat box that slides are not moving.
Yeah. So because right now I'm talking about facts and figures, just the numbers. I'm deliberately not moving them. We'll come to it. Yeah. Thank you for telling me. Yeah, we'll just move. I know maybe you're, bored looking at one slide. Just a minute. So, yeah, so much of water is being used, and just to make one T-shirt, again, you know about it. One T-shirt uses approximately 2,720 liters of water to make, and this is equivalent to what the amount of water an adult would drink in 3 years. 20% of global water population actually comes from dyeing and finishing of the textiles. So fiber production and clothing production usually takes place in developing countries. So see, the developed countries are having fun. They are giving us the orders, we are making them, and then we are utilizing our resources. We are being dumped with all the, you can say, the carbon pollution and using of the, overusing our energy resources. Even the logistics are not sustainable because through transportation, things are developed in India and then they are transported all over the world. So the logistics are so you can say incorrect. Why cannot it be local production and local distribution, which used to be long ago? So this kind of industrial waste that is happening, it is called the linear model, the linear economy model, or the linear production model. Nothing, like very little amount is recycled. Most of even the countries like which are depending on us for the production, at the end of the day, they dump they dump it back in India, back into the developing countries, because they say that, oh, you can recycle them, and we just allow it, all the the cottons and synthetics and these containers of loads of rejected fabric garments. It keeps getting dumped over here, and we have to find a solution to these problems. So a lot of research and development is needed to solve these issues of the textile industry. We do have organizations like the Textile Research Associations, BITRA, CITRA, NITRA, their function is to do research and development, and not only, it's two-pronged problem. On one side, they do research and development to stay ahead of their competitors. On the other side, they do research and development for process control, energy saving, waste control, that kind of thing. So everything is, in a way, like our responsibility. So we have to, on one side, yes, we have to stay in competition, but then at the same time, we do need research and development for sustainability. So the negatives of this industry are very significant, and they impact the environment a great deal. In the research and development about NITRA, you know that it specializes in producing high value addition fabrics, like, they make protective clothing for workers, which is like it protects the workers from workers who are working in pesticide industries. They produce antibacterial fabric, UV protected fabric, functional fabric for bedding and sportswear, taking out yarn from fiber from corn husks, making fabric NICO, nylon and cotton, for paramilitary and military combat. So this kind of R&D is going on, but this is not enough. We need more hands on deck, and it is the faculty and the students who is to be directed in this direction to do some research and development in their own area, small area. Like I said, the butterfly effect. What you do in your area can be replicated and taken forward. In India, main research and development funds are being spent on pharmaceutical and software industry, but clothing and textile industry also needs funds, right? So now I move the slide, and so let's talk about polyester fabric now. Polyester is a microfiber, right? It is the worst fabric for the skin. It is harmful for human health and environment throughout its manufacture, from fiber to fabric to finishing stage, and then to the final product. Even during usage, it sheds small fibrils, and at the end of life treatment also it gives us a tough time, because it does not degrade, and it remains in the soil for years and years, hundreds of years. Of course, it is cheap to make. That is why it is so popular. It is sturdy and durable. And you will realize, if you look into your own wardrobes, 60% of your clothing consists of synthetic materials, or it is a blend of natural and synthetic, or it is a blend of synthetic and synthetic, whether it is garments or it is carpets or curtains or blankets, what have you. The production of polyester involves use of chemicals. We all know that. Again, I keep saying that because because you have read all of this. This is just a warm-up. So it uses chemicals like formaldehyde, benzene, toluene, and other toxic compounds, and dicarboxylic acid, or terephthalic acid, and ethylene glycol. They are used to manufacture polyester, and they are very carcinogenic. Functional finishes that we want on our fabrics are wrinkle resistance, extra soft feel, easy to wash, easy to care. Now again, to impart these finishes, again, the polyester needs lots of chemicals which are poisonous and hazardous to health and environment. Polyester, it can cause acute health problems like respiratory and lung infections. It can affect the reproductive system and it can reduce the sperm counts. So it's also believed that it carries viruses and bacteria. They stick onto the fiber because it's a bad conductor of heat and sweat. So it, the bacteria finds a right kind of environment to attach itself to it. So when you feel itchy or you feel a rash or redness, you can well imagine what is going on in that sweat on the fabric. And of course, it results in bad odors. There's something called polyester fill, fiber fill, which is the fiber fill we find in our pillows and cushions and comforters. That too is very energy intensive. And because it is polyester, it is from, the non-renewable resources of the earth. And toxic chemicals are used to make it. And it releases volatile organic compounds. So for all you know, you're sleeping on a pillow, which is very comfortable under your head, under your neck, but then you are breathing a lot of chemicals which are retained inside that, things like, formaldehyde and benzene, which it releases in the atmosphere. So I need not repeat that it is hazardous to health and environment. Then synthetic textiles are a potential source of polyester, especially is a potential source of these microfibers in the atmosphere, which act like sponges. There have been experiments on lab mice, and they have found that, they have found in their gut, in their liver and kidney, tons of, these microfibers over there. Let me see if I have a next slide to show you. No, wait. So it has affected in the lab experiments. We have seen that it affects the reproductive issues of the lab mice. They lose appetite. They don't grow more because the gut is holding microfiber. So, appetite is lost and they do not grow. So such a thing can happen in humans also. There is no, as yet, there is no, a solid study on this kind of thing, that it is causing so much harm to humanity. The experimentation is only at, the lab mice stage, or the, the fish and the crustaceans, the sea life. And so there is no proof yet, but then it's a warning. We have to be careful. So what happens is that during abrasion, as we move, as we wear a garment, or as the fabric layers move over each other, fibrillation of the fibers occurs. And these fibrils, which are very teeny tiny in diameter, as I said earlier, they become airborne and they can be inhaled. So we are regularly inhaling and ingesting these microfibers. Especially, garments like your winter gear, the fleece jackets and yoga pants. These are the garments, and of course the blankets and carpets. These are the products which allow a lot of microfiber to float in the air. An interesting statement by one researcher says that we can consume 5 grams of microfibers each week, which is equivalent to a credit card. And these carry bisphenols on them, which affects the endocrine system. So again, like I said, that there is no study yet to kind of really alarm us that, it's happening to humans, because 99% of the fibers that we inhale, they are thrown out of the body, right? So nothing alarming like that. Oh my God, I've had 5 grams of fiber this week. No, it's not like that. But then it's just a warning sign. It's not going to, take our lives right now, but it's going to affect the generations to come. Most fiber comes out of the, okay, let me just show you. We'll just run through these slides, Again, need not read the whole thing. These are chemicals used in textile industry and their effect on health. So sulfuric acid, carbon disulfide, nitric acid, you can just glance through. And on the other side, you can see the effect on health. Skin rashes, muscle pain, gastrointestinal tract is, injuries. Then there's heart failure, allergies, carcinogenic. So these kind of tables we've already seen before. uh, Chemicals used in manufacturing polyester. So that was textiles per se, and this is polyester. Again, formaldehyde, already told you, terephthalic acid, very harmful. Then we have metal-based chemicals used at different stages of chemical processing. So fiber production stage, lead, we all know lead is harmful. We all know cadmium, zinc, mercury, harmful. In dyeing and printing and finishing, like I said, again, heavy metals are used. Then there are catalyst, cross-linking, auxiliary. So you can just glance through it. Aluminium, zinc, copper, chromium, silver. In printing, heavy metals are used. Dyes, almost all synthetic dyes, they have heavy metals in them, right? So these are the different types of dyes, synthetic dyes, which cause various harmful health effects they have. These are some of the banned dyes. There's a longer list. I just put a few over here. We're talking about synthetic dyes. So microfibers, a big challenge, too small to see. All this I've already, I just talked about it. So each time we do laundry, we shed maximum of microfibers. So they travel through the water pipes and they come into the soil and the rivers, and that's how they cause pollution. You'll be surprised that they have tested some brands of US and German beers, and they found the beer polluted with microfiber, right, in two separate studies. They have also studied the composition of, some vegetables, salt, and tap water, and they have found microfibers floating in that. The eye cannot see them, but they are there. So these microfibers, once they come into the rivers and the soil, of course, they hurt the marine life and the crops. Per wash, one time when you load your washing machine and you wash your laundry, you the garments and the textiles, they release 6 lakh to 15 lakhs numbers of microfibers. An average person, single person in a year can shed about 30 crores of microfibers from his or her clothing and textile materials. If we look at our cupboards, all of us own much more than 100 pieces of clothing, right? And out of this, most of it is polyester, and either in blend shape or in pure polyester shape. So do we really need those 100 pieces of clothing? We never pause to think. Another observation is 35% of microfiber is from polyester, and acrylic sheds even more. And acrylic is what we wear in the winters, our fleece jackets, like I said earlier, and other, those polyfills and all that we have. Our cardigans, our shawls, our, the blankets that we take these days, they're all made of acrylic. So blends of cotton and polyester, they release fewer microfibers as compared to 100% polyester. Even if a fabric has yarn which is tightly twisted, then it sheds less microfiber. Tightly woven fabrics, they do release microfiber, but not as much as the loosely woven one. So let me just grab a sip of water. 1 minute, please. Sorry about that. So British scientists have studied that, amphipods found in the water. They are like shrimp-like crustaceans on the seabeds. They studied the deep seabeds of 6 different oceans, and they brought them to the labs, these crustaceans, and they found that 84% of them had microfibers in them. And very interestingly, most of them, most of the fibers were colored blue. So that shows that how much we go for blue. You know, the blue denim jeans, the blue jackets, the indigo blue. So it shows the human preference for colors. So interesting fact here. The fish that has been caught in the Atlantic Ocean, their bellies have been studied. Microplastics have been found over there. So people who eat seafood like mussels, clams, oysters, fish, so along with whatever comes on their plate, they ingest the ingest the microfibers as well with the food. So again, this poses a you know, a health concern. Uh, then there's another study where they have found contamination in fruits like apples and in vegetables like carrots. So needless to say that other fruits and vegetables also carry these microfibers. What happens is that once the waste fabric is dumped, and even if it is kind of treated and it forms into a sludge, the sludge has to go somewhere. It is thrown on the soil somewhere. It's not that, you know, it will just vanish in thin air. It does leave behind a sludge. And this is what puddles around or pools around the crop. And it does not allow oxygen exchange into the roots. And then the plants get stunted and they do not give the required amount of, you know, produce that they are supposed to give. Modern facilities for wastewater treatment are there, but they are mostly there with the, again, with the developed countries. There is filtering technology deployed everywhere, but how much effective it is, we all know. In India, we have very smaller treatment plants for the industry. They are less efficient, and you know, it becomes a huge challenge. The developing countries, it's mainly a challenge for the developing countries because, as I said earlier, the developed countries not only make us work for them, but they also dump their waste clothing on us. I'm not saying that the country, you know, we should not take orders, we should not do their work. Yes, we have to. Economy has to go on. But what I said initially, the butterfly effect, we, you and I, we can make some difference in our little world over here. Even if these plastic particles, if they go through the filters, you know, through the filtering plants, like I said, they still end up in the sewage, and that sewage is loaded with pollutants, and it goes in the, finally it goes in the soil and water, and finally comes to our food. The dyes that are used to color these synthetics, we know that they are non-biodegradable, and they cause a huge environment problem as well. As I showed you in the slides, you know, the synthetic dyes causing headaches, lack of concentration, nausea, diarrhea, fatigue, joint pain, dizziness. We've read about all of this before. So wet processing operations of dyeing, finishing, sizing, and other similar processes are a major concern to sustainability. So with this, this is about all the facts and figures and microfibers that I was talking about. So let's look at something interesting now. This is global fiber production. You can see the table, non-synthetic and synthetic. The red one is more, all over the years and growing even more. Textile waste management through 1960 to 2018. So the gray over here shows the landfill. The blue shows combustion with energy recovery. Some energy recovery is there, and the darker blue up there shows recycled. So the landfill is growing at a higher rate, we can say that. And how much of it can we save by recycling? How much of it we are really saving? We know that. Global fiber production with synthetic fibers taking up to 75%, of which 55% is polyester. This is 2020. And see how by 2025, what the projection is, how much polyester fiber is going to upscale. with a little margin for wool and cotton and cellulose, right? Carbon dioxide emission is there throughout, right from the fiber stage to, when we use the oil resources in the processing, in the clothing industry, in the logistics, when it is transported from one place to the other, even while in use and after use. Carbon emission is happening at every stage. Microfibers all over the world, you can see there, affecting the fish, the ocean, the sea life, affecting the birds, the environment, um, every part of the world. The German beer I talked about, it's there. You can see my cursor? Yeah, you can. So the German beer over here, the fish. So even like places which are meant for holidaying, those areas are also kind of polluted with microfibers. Lobster, sugar, sea salt. Sea salt also has been found to be loaded with microfibers. So look at this, one garbage truck per second. How much more fast can you go? One garbage truck full of clothing, not just, this is only clothing, not just, your kitchen waste and plastics and other things. Just clothing is coming out, being dumped at a speed of one garbage truck per second. Fiber production and clothing production usually takes place in developing countries. I told you, logistics are wasteful, not sustainable. We should be local rather than global. Some years ago, we used to talk about, oh, wow, it's become global. The world has shrunk. Very good, very nice. But now we are coming back and thinking about being local rather than global. So these fibers are airborne and they are aquatic. So they're in the air, they're in the water. I've already said this, so I won't elaborate on this slide. So microfibers come from clothes, carpets, curtains, blankets, and other household items, right? Plastic microfibers are found in fish, mussel, chicken, sea salt, beer, honey, tap water, bottled water. This in that crustacean I talked about, it was seen in the gut of the crustacean, the fiber, and I said this one is red, but they found a lot of blue fibers. So natural and synthetic fibers, we know what they are. Now we'll talk about the laundry part of it. Right? I told you in laundry, a lot of fiber is, gets comes off the garments and comes into the water system. Estimated fiber release from wash, mostly it is acrylic, then it is polyester, and less of it is polyester cotton blend. I told you that earlier. Look at this. This is my hand, and this is lint from my machine, right? Look at that big thing. And I collected this in 1 week. I put a filter. There is a filter actually in the dryer, and I have to clean it every few times because fiber comes off the fabrics and it gets collected. There's a mesh in it, a net, and it gets collected on that mesh so that it doesn't go out into the air from there. So when I cleaned it, I kept collecting them for a week, the fibers, and I had more than a handful. Looks ugly, right? So we can have, now what are the solutions? We have to do laundry, right? We have to. So we cannot afford to not wash our clothes. So there are best ways to do washing. A few simple suggestions which I'll give you here. Wash with cold water and fewer cycles of the machine. A 30-minute cycle at 50 degrees Celsius reduces microfiber release by 30%. We usually wash it for 85 minutes, 1 hour, 60 minutes, and we try to raise the temperature so that, okay, my clothes will come out more clean. So wash them cold and wash them for a smaller cycle because clothes are not really that grimy. We should invest in a front-loading machine rather than a top loading machine. The front loading machine shakes less and it uses less water as compared to the top loading machine. It reduces microfiber release is reduced 7 times if we use a front loading machine. We should fill up the machine load to the maximum recommended capacity, 3/4 full, because larger washes reduces the microfiber release. Sometimes what happens is, oh, my child needs this particular garment tomorrow, you know. So although I don't have a full load of laundry, let me just wash these 2 clothes in the machine, you know, for the child. So that's not a very healthy thing to do. Machine should be fully loaded when you are washing. Wash clothes less often. I'm not saying this for your socks and for clothing like underwear, innerwear, but yes, your jeans and skirts and sweaters, they can be washed less. So sometimes we are very finicky and, you know, we have that kind of, what do you say, that compulsive disorder, I won't say, but like, yeah, compulsion that, oh, I can't wear my clothes twice, you know. These kind of ideas are set in. So try to wash these heavy garments like jeans and skirts, you know, wear them a couple of times, more than once, and then wash them. Use liquid detergent rather than powder detergent, because liquid detergent offers less friction in the movement of the fibers, and because of less friction, less of microfiber is released. You can use laundry bags. You can put there are mesh bags. You can put all the laundry into a big bag and then throw it inside the machine, so that can filter out, or that can retain some of the microfiber, right? Make sure that your washing machine, the outlet over there, you attach a filter. Ask your the provider, whatever brand of machine you have, they are making these filters now, so you can attach it to the outer pipe so that all the fiber gets caught in that filter and it doesn't go into the sewage system. Then let me see what I have on the next slide. Yeah, these are the bags. Interesting. You can throw your laundry in such a bag and then zip it up and then put it in the wash. I think it's possibly available on Amazon. Now this is, I think another sip of water is called for. Yeah. So we have, just look at this picture here. Through laundry, how much microplastic fiber is coming into the air, right? We were talking about laundry itself. 35% is through laundry and 28% is through logistics, transporting the garments from one place to the other, doing global work rather than local work. So transportation, these two things cause maximum carbon dioxide emission and release of microfiber. You know, microfiber also comes off these tires of your trucks and other vehicles that drive on the road. So I was talking about linear economy. Right now we are following a linear economy: raw materials, production, usage, waste, finished. We just go like this. But it should be a circular economy. We should, in our own way, you, me, we can do something and follow this circular economy where there is production, we buy from the market, we reuse, right? We distribute, we give it to somebody, we recycle, we repurpose. This is what we have to do. So we need to do some wardrobe shuffling, reshuffling of our wardrobe, right? Adjustment in our wardrobe. So you should not be, no, I should correct myself. You should not be, sorry for that. We can buy second-hand clothing. We can wear our clothes longer because new clothes release more microfiber. Initially, up till about 8 washes, the new garment up to 8 washes will release a lot of microfiber, and then it slows down, right? So we can also invest in high quality clothing, because high quality means the fabric is of high quality, fabric construction. It affects the release of microfiber. So instead of buying, a lot of times we buy something just because we're getting it cheap. So don't do that. We can buy high quality material and make it last longer. Instead of buying, say, 4 shirts every month or 2 months, you can just, which are much cheaper, you can buy 2 shirts which are, of a good brand, a good quality, and they can last you much longer. So buy clothes which are made out of, try to buy them which are made out of natural fibers, cotton, biodegradable, grown without toxic pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. Now, a 2020 study revealed that 75% of our clothing and textiles are made of synthetic fibers. 75%, this we've already talked about. Polyester releases pollutants, already talked about. Again, circular fashion economy, like grow, stitch, wear, mend, pass it on, and then it goes into the compost because it is natural and biodegradable. Let me see what else we have. So similar thing, ambitions of the proposed clothing circular economy. So phase out substances of concern and microfiber release. So phase out your polyester garments, the blends, phase them out slowly, right? Increase your clothing utilization. Before dumping any garment, just pause. See what you can do more about it, right? Radically improve your recycling methods, right? And make effective use of resources and move to renewable inputs. Now, this is about how to segregate, how to recycle or reuse your garments. So before that, it is a Herculean task, to remove these microfibers, pollution from our lives. It is very hard. We actually need some regulations from the government, from the authorities as well. The business industry, manufacturing industry has to do some innovation. And then right now, I've been talking about our individual effort. Individual efforts are okay, but at the same time, government regulations are also required. So at our level, yes, we can spread the word through social media. We can go question the fashion brands. We buy garments from H&M, Zara, or whatever, Benetton. We can ask them. There are, their mail addresses are available all over. We can question them how they are addressing this problem. We can sign petitions. We are now, the WhatsApp community. So you can just make people unite on WhatsApp and, raise a voice that, stop so much usage of polyester. So these regulations are needed to tackle the issues from the top. Can you imagine that there are 30 major washing machine manufacturing companies in the world? 30, right? And how many textile manufacturers are there? Multiples. You cannot even count them. So there should be more of, more research and development on washing machines also, and something that can prevent the microfiber, filter it out, and prevent it from coming into the mainstream. So in fact, in 2020 in France, that was the first country in the world to adopt a law that said that it will require all new washing machines to have microfiber filters by 2025. So something like that even our government can do, our manufacturers can do. We can ask the manufacturers, we can, when we buy a machine, we say that, no, I want one which has a microfiber filter. That's how the manufacturer will know that, oh yeah, I have to go back to the industry, tell them that this is what the consumer is demanding. So in the United States, in California, recently a bill was passed, that they would do one pilot program to see how effective the microfiber filters are. So one is controlled situation, one is uncontrolled situation. So the result of this pilot study will come out by 2023, where they're going to see, the microfiber filter, how much it is filtering out. So then they will know that how much is, if it is not being filtered, how much is going into the system. In New York, what they did was that they said that if any piece of clothing, they've told the manufacturers, and obviously, like the announcement has come down to whichever countries they're getting their garments produced from, that every piece of garment or clothing which has more than 50% synthetic fiber should have a warning label for consumers that this is, it's going to emit microfiber waste, so wash it by hand. Then coming to recycling of clothing, 98% of the fibers that are there in our clothing, 98% is used to make clothing. The rest is used to make home textiles and made-ups. 73% of the fibers used in the clothing ends up in landfills, 73%. And just 12% of it is recycled. We saw a chart behind, right? I showed you one graph. So just 12% of it is recycled. So recycling damages, actually, if we try to recycle the fiber, it does get damaged. And the new quality that comes out is not that good, right? So we can, as far as cottons and natural fibers are concerned, when we try to recycle them, their quality does suffer. We can use just 1% of the recycled cotton or any other natural fabric. However, polyester, it can be recycled better. It can get a new life. It can be dissolved and got back again into the system, and with the same quality, and it doesn't lose its quality on recycling. So these polyesters should go, and other synthetics should go in for recycling. But then sorting it out is hard. Economics of it is hard, right? So it is hard to sort them out. But then they are taking. There has been research and development in new methods of sorting. So you can see a slide over here. The garment, when it is stitched, the thread carries a RFID yarn, right? So this gets tagged. So when we buy the garment, we are still it's been stitched in the thread. So the manufacturer actually knows where the garment is traveling, right? And when it is dumped, he gets to know. So it can be tracked. So this is one way research and development is going on, in better sorting methods. So this is one of the methods. So although it is a challenge to sort, because when we are trying to sort, there are blends. Synthetic and synthetic is blended, natural and synthetic is blended. So when we try to say melt a polyester, it's not necessary that it has only polyester. It has some other synthetic also. So one will dissolve, one will not dissolve. So these kind of problems one runs into. Then there is, separation of fibers and blends here. Dissolve the dissolvable. That's one method. Dissolve the dissolvable, and whatever dissolves, of course, that finishes, or it's again regenerated, and what remains can be reused. So that's how the blends can be separated. Then this is another way, sorting and separating. So in fact, we are doing a project, Tigris project, here in Punjab, in Zirakpur, in a village called Pandwala. So there, what we're doing is that we collect waste garments and clothing and fabric from people, from the university, from the faculty, from anywhere we get it. We sort it out, and then, it is ripped open, washed, and then it is redone into new products like aprons and bags and scrunchies and mats and cushion covers, like that. So, and then we engage, in Pandwala, we engage the women, local women of the village, to do that. So right now it's all free going on. It's funded by University of Cambridge. So we just pay the salary to the girl who teaches them this kind of, recycling and all. Other than that, they get to learn free of cost, and they get to spend about 3 hours, at the institute where they come, the women, and that kind of, it keeps them happy. They're doing something constructive. They socialize, they meet, they come and work, that sort of thing. And then slowly it'll become an income generating unit. We plan to change it into, a business where they will form a self-help group like that, and then start, you know, um, selling their products also. So this is, you will find these, like, there should be bins. Even in India, in universities and other places, we should have such bins placed around where we can dump our clothing, from where it can be picked up for projects like Tigress. Um, is So, okay, all this was about, so much about polyester and synthetic fabrics, right? Um, when I was talking about sorting, there is also biosorting method of sorting out the fabrics one from the other. So where they use enzymes to dissolve instead of using chemicals to dissolve one kind of synthetic and retaining the other kind of synthetic, we can use enzymes also over there. But again, a lot of research is being done in this. It's not yet uh, that commonly used. So that is called biorecycling, where enzymes depolymerize the textile waste fibers into their original monomers, and then it comes back into the new fiber. So repurposing and reusing, resale and rental. Resale, a lot of these shops are reselling, they you can leave your garments with them, and they give you some kind of some points on that. Your points keep collecting, and the garments that you deposit with them, they either go back into the manufacturing cycle, or they mend and sell them as well. So anyway, talking about regenerated cellulose, we know the process of, how regenerated cellulose comes. It comes from bull pulp, wood pulp, and this NMMO is used. It's an organic chemical used to make lyocell or tencel fiber. So this is the process of it: dissolve, filter, spin, and then wash, bale it, color it, cut it into staples, and then make viscose rayon out of it, nitrocellulose, cupramonium, modal, polynosic, lyocell. The first ones were cupramonium, and nitrocellulose was the first rayon that was made. Cupramonium came second, then came viscose, then came acetate rayon also, acetate rayon, and then came modal, polynosic, and lyocell. So cupramonium and nitrocellulose were rejected because they were not that environment friendly, right? And then viscose rayon was by far better, but then now polynossic and modal are also being made, and then lyocell, which I told you, this is totally friendly, 100% environment friendly, because it uses an organic solvent for dissolving, whereas all of these use carbon disulfide or acetic acid, or sulfuric acid or nitric acid to dissolve. So this is most friendly. In case of modal and polynossic, it has a little bit of a polyester in it, but that too an environment friendly polyester. So this is a environment friendly rayon. Then we come to, I'll just take a sip of water if you don't mind. How much? I think I've talked for an hour. Can I take a 2-minute break?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Just 2 minutes, okay? I'll just get some coffee. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm back again. Are we ready?
Yes, ma'am. You may start.
Okay. So, like I said, if I go back on the previous slide, how do I go back? Yeah. Regenerated cellulose is good. It is good, but then we have other options as well, right? Try to, when I said make a conscious decision about what you are using, you can reduce the use of polyester and those synthetic fabrics. You can increase the use of, modal and lyocell instead of, the other rayons. Uh, and then bast fibers are also there. These bast fibers are they're made from soft woody stems of plants, and these plants are those which have veins in them. Initially, they were used only for cottage and for gunny bags, and the source was flax, which gives us linen, hemp plant, jute, nettle. You know what is nettle? Nettle is that plant which stings. The leaves sting a lot. So I think in Hindi it is called, as a child we used to call it, bichubuti. So nettle plant. So actually cellulose can be taken from any plant which has a veined structure, right? So the hemp fiber comes from what we call the hashish plant or the marijuana. um, it has about 20% part of it contains that cannabinoidal, the intoxicating narcotic content, but it is used to extract fiber. So linen from flax plant, that's what the flax seeds look like. They're very healthy to eat. We all know that. So once the fibers are extracted, they're combed, scouring, and all is done. They're combed and turned into nice soft fiber. This is one experiment that I did with my student. She cleared her PhD, of course, after this. We went into a lot of application of nanoparticles and all, but initial, I'll tell you, like this is the snake plant, scientific name, Sansevieria trachyphysitica plant, right? So we took this, we got it from actually Nainital, because over there it grows in huge numbers, huge amount. So we imported it, if I can call it, from there, although we should have taken it from local areas. Yeah, point noted. So then it was naturally retted, just left in water for a few days. It became like all gooey. So this gooey substance, which is like cellulose, it was taken out, washed, cleaned, right? And these fibers came out. These fibers came out, they were beige in color, they were very coarse in nature, and the length was 110 centimeters, long filament kind of a fiber. So we studied the microscopic view. It was soaked in alkali to remove all more gummy material from it, to clean it, right? Alkali wash. The aim was to observe the characterization of zinc oxide, copper oxide, and carbon-based nanoparticles on this. We applied nanoparticles and then we studied the chemical properties. So to see what difference these nanoparticles made, because by itself this fiber cannot be used for anything more than making cords and ropes. So we thought that let's see what nanoparticles do to it. If the properties, mechanical properties improve, then it can be used maybe as a blend with polyester, or so that use of polyester gets reduced. That was the aim. So these were the properties. Linear density was measured, breaking length, tenuity, elongation, fiber diameter, all was measured. And the conclusion was that application of metallic as well as carbon-based nanoparticles applied to the fiber favorably affected the mechanical properties. And the fiber became mechanically stronger and durable. Increase in linear density of the fiber made the fiber thick, sturdy, and durable. Increase in fiber tonicity meant that the strength of the fiber increased. Elongation is an important property that is related to the ability of the fiber to resist change in shape without breaking. So its elongation also increased. the fiber diameter reduced, which made the yarn fine. So that was a good experiment. So this can be taken further. You can take it at your own level, look around for some plant where you can extract the fiber from it and then treat it further with various finishes, or maybe without finishes, it can be used as such. Furtherance of the study, automotive and aircraft industries have been actively developing different kinds of natural fibers, mainly from hemp, flax, sisal, and bioresin systems for their interior components. So then, if they're using these, why not this one also? Right? So high mechanical properties with lower prices of natural fiber composites are making them attractive for various applications. Mechanical properties are good, and the price is low because it is a natural, locally extracted fiber. The study is useful for textile industries involved in research and development. So I would say it's useful for textile industries and for the students of textiles who are going to find their vocation in the textile industry. So I can skip this. Now let's talk about cotton. You must be thinking that we've talked about polyester, acrylic, and bast fibers. Why aren't we talking about cotton? So here you go. Now, see, there was something called a desi cotton, which we have totally forgotten, a desi cotton. So many years ago in India, the finest cotton known was our own desi cotton, which had short fibers, right? Uh, so this indigenous variety of desi cotton is our traditional variety of cotton, which has got lost. So this local variety of crop, it is less demanding on the environment. It in terms of water resources, these plants of cotton, of desi cotton, they are rain fed and they are drought resistant and they are pest resistant. They are less maintenance intensive. So they can grow along with the food crop, right? So whatever food crop you're growing, you need not replace the food crop as is done in the hybrid cotton or the BT cotton or the conventional cotton. Uh, when we grow BT cotton, the land becomes only for BT cotton, monocrop. You cannot rotate it next time you grow something else over there because it drains the soil totally of its minerals. So you keep growing BT cotton over there. Uh, cotton we know is, of course, the most popular fabric all over the world. If it is 60% polyester, then 40% cotton is in demand, right? So it accounts for more than half of all the fiber needs of the globe. Everybody needs to wear cotton in their garments and other clothing that they use. So to keep up with the demand, cotton growers resorted to artificial means of artificial cotton. So what happened was, actually initially we used to be growing desi cotton, but when the Britishers came, they interrupted the cycle. They encouraged the people to grow not desi cotton because it was the yield of the land was comparatively less. So since less crop came out, they promoted the use of GM cotton or genetically modified cotton. So that's how we started growing the genetically modified cotton. And then we adopted the BT cotton, I think in 2002, 2012, I forget when. So to keep up with the demand of so much of cotton, the cotton growers now resorted to artificial means and excessive use of pesticides and growing BT cotton because they wanted faster output. And we know that it is full of chemicals. Growing, conventional cotton crop requires a lot of fertilizers, herbicides, insecticides, etc., and defoliants also. The extra grass, the weeds that grow all around, they are to be killed. So conventional cotton, this conventional cotton is called the GM cotton or the genetically modified cotton. So it is, of course, a pest-resistant plant, and but then it is still it is prone to some kind of a bollworm, so it damages the crop. So for that they have to add a lot of pesticide to the plant. It is it is modified, but it is not pest resistant. Sorry, it is not pest resistant. So it is to be, it is treated with a lot of chemicals. So when this bollworm attacks the plant, then some kind of a fungus excreta from the insect, it gets deposited and it ruins the um, ball of the BOLN of the cotton. Moreover, this BT cotton is not regenerative. Every time you have to buy new seeds for it, right? Because it is a, a transgene. So it will not give its own seeds. So it becomes like, what are the drawbacks then? It uses more water. It uses a lot of pesticides, insecticides, and then its seeds also are not, it doesn't even give us seeds to grow it again. And then you cannot grow vegetables and other crop on the same soil. So the desi cotton that was well prevalent few decades ago, it contributes now to just 5% of the cotton cultivated. The rest 95% is BT cotton. So, but some designers, some workers, some people have been encouraging use of desi cotton, and there's these people who have experimented. They have found a great dramatic improvement in the livelihood of farmers, spinners, and weavers who are growing, who have started growing desi cotton with them, and they are attached with them. They make them grow the cotton and then they buy the cotton from them and then they use it for their collections. Uh, this desi cotton is like, it's called a multi-crop variety, and 2 or more crops can be grown on the same piece of land during one growing season. So you can regrow, and so there is more cash flow. They have come to realize this. So whereas, as I said, the GMO cotton, regular cotton or conventional cotton, it leaves the soil unsuitable for growing other crops. So several people are becoming aware of this, about these problems, and the popularity of organic materials is growing amongst consumers also. So organic cotton has been so desi cotton actually gave way to organic cotton. The word became organic cotton, right? So it has been around for a while now, and it is used to make premium varieties of bed linen and clothing and towels. But then organic cotton also uses, high quantities of water, large quantities of water, and it is more expensive because of the way it is produced. But then there are people, hello, there's somebody wanting to say something? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you
Please
hear me?
mute the mic, participants. If you have any question, put it in the chat box. Yes, ma'am, you may continue.
Yeah. Okay. So, of course, like there are lots of ifs and buts. You will say that you say don't use polyester, you say use organic cotton, but organic cotton is also expensive to produce, right? Desi cotton, very few people are growing. So there will be these issues, but then it is you who has to make that butterfly effect. You have to think, you have to make your own choice. Nobody is saying that you do this only. You make a choice, right? So purity of the cotton depends upon the way it is picked, right? If it is hand-picked cotton, again, what we are doing, if we are growing desi cotton and it is hand-picked by the local farmer and not machine-picked, if it is machine-picked, it damages the fiber. So if it is hand-picked, and instead of organic cotton, the special variety, we grow desi cotton. So we hand-pick it, we are preserving the, you can say, the purity of the fiber, right? So, you can do it on a small scale with your students around your institution, around your homes, and just see what difference it makes. How is it different from the other, right? From the regular cotton. So, no doubt, regular cotton is more in demand and supply, and it is machine picked to cope up with the rush. But we know what all it damages, right? So organic cotton is softer, it has longer fibers, and especially if it is hand-picked, it ensures good quality, unbroken fibers. So go for organic cotton. And these days, that class of people, that class of population, which is, earning, say, fair amount of wages, and people, Indians are traveling, they are travelers, they are stable in their professions. There is a class of people which cares about the environment, right? Which cares about the environment, and whoever cares about the environment um, goes in for more environment friendly products. It may start from a thought that, okay, it's healthy for me, it's good for my body, it's good for my child. It starts from there, and then slowly the contribution effect goes manifold. So this is about cotton. Let me see what I have after this. These are the differences in the different kinds of cotton. This natural one is, desi one is rain fed, right? But this is more, it gives more yield, right? Cost of production is less for desi cotton, high for the other cotton. G herbaceum, these are the hybrid varieties, right? Um, then social problems not reported. Seed production program is weak. It is strong over here. Bollworms problem, it is tolerant. This is susceptible. Hybrids, the BT cotton is susceptible to pests, to leaf curl, to bollworms. Not suitable and yields less because we cannot do multi-cropping over here. It spoils the soil, right? Cost of production is of course high, and social problems reported. Conventional cotton and organic cotton. So organic cotton, no seeds, fungicides used. Soil is maintained for crop rotation. Removal of weeds is done by hand, good soil. Here they use fertilizers, a certain kind of chemicals to remove the weeds. Removal of leaves, right? Uh, Leaves removed by toxic chemicals. Water, yes, it requires more water. This requires less water. So you can choose. Choice is yours. Nobody is forcing anybody. You have to take the decision that most suits you. So now this is a story about, just let me see. So this is a story about brand Aushadhi. Aushadhi means medicine or a herb. So it's about this guy Nishant Chopra, young entrepreneur from Erode, South India. His way of working is seed to sue fashion, a green dreamer, right? So what he does is in Erode, which is a textile hub of South India, uh, a sustainable seed to closet initiative was launched for initially women wear collection by named Aushadhi by this entrepreneur Nishant Chopra, right? He tapped into the tradition of the handcrafted textile technique and natural sustainable materials, right? And he worked with a designer from Europe, some designer, Richard Mellon. So, because he himself is not a textile or design person, he was only interested in the crop and the local art. So Nishant, born in Rajasthan, he resides in Erode now, and Richard, of course, lives in Ireland. Um, he was born in Ireland but lives in London. Nishant is a graduate in business studies, right? So he was brought up near one of the biggest textile hubs, and he used to, that is Erode, and he used to be playing on the piles of soft and comfortable fabrics that his dad's warehouse, uh, it housed. His dad was into the textile business. So he used to visit textile industries, and he was textile factories, and he would play around with the fabrics that his dad was involved in making. The whole family was involved in textile making for past many years. So because of the influence of his family business, his interest developed in sustain traditional crafts. Right? So his brand was launched at a fashion show in Paris in March 2016. The style of the brand is simple, sustainable, timeless. So timeless is very important. I take this word as a cue. You know, what you buy, it should be timeless for you. You know, whatever garment you buy, it should be timeless. So you bought it today, you wear it, you use it, you know, you talk about it, you tell its story, how you bought it, where you bought it, how much you spent on it. It becomes a story. And then you, after that, it is still so good, you pass it on to somebody, right? So Nishant was he is into hand weaving and natural dyeing techniques as well. His whole process of manufacturing the garment clothing is organic. Oops, sorry, what did I do? It's totally organic, and it is local, and local skilled craft people are they are engaged in working with him, and they develop beautiful fabrics called the Aushadhi brand. So where one artisan can create, his artisan can create only 5 meters a day. However, the industry in the machinery, you know, you can turn out 100 meters of fabric in a day. His artisan turns out 5 meters of fabric in a day. And he uses uh, dyes, natural dyes, which he obtains from flowers, leaves, you know, and maybe from you know, the fruits, the leftover vegetables, you know. And his craftsmen, they make the fabric in complicated weaves, interesting weaves, to add value to the fabric. It is appreciated more, and it gives more importance to the fabric. So he does a lot of R&D in the type of weaves that he makes. So he also believes in fair trade, you know, paying the workers their due and not cheating them of their labor, of their money. He tries to have a very transparent and local supply chain, right? So initially he worked with a cooperative of handloom weavers, and then he found that less than, in the cooperatives also, less than half the amount, you know, they deserved was being paid to them. So then he bifurcated into his own business, and he started dealing with the weavers directly, dealing with the farmers directly, and so that he could give fair wages to the weavers, and he could pay good amount of money to the farmers. He invested in his own looms. He invested in his own dyes. He bought the cotton from the farmers, got it spun into yarn, dyed it himself, and then gave it to the weavers. Right. So that's how he introduced Aushadhi. So his theory is called the seed to sew stitch. He believes in, you know, uh, having an artisan collective, and he also believes in. He says that people never try. You know, you try, you can make a difference. You can make a contribution to the environment, right? And human always finds their set ways, and they get stuck to a system. We think that the system will not work, so we are stuck in the system. We think whatever is going on, you know, let it go on. It's very hard to break into the system. So we do not want to get out of our comfort zone and do our own thing. But just because, you know, everybody is doing it, it doesn't mean it is right. So you can do your own thing. You can make a difference. You can set up your own brands like this, right? Then there is another story I have about, this is his harvesting going on. Grows his own cotton. He's in touch with the farmers, with the cotton pickers. That's his brand, you know, natural dyed. It went to the fashion show, right? Very charming dress, good colors, natural dyes. And then there's another story about Tula fabric. Tula. This is also a not-for-profit social enterprise. They make garments with desi cotton, right? So originally, of course, it was Desi cotton, like I told you, originally it was grown by small farmers, small holdings, and rain-fed crop it used to be. Yarn was hand-spun, and he's still doing it. This co-founder, Ananthu, co-founder of Tula, he works with Desi cotton. So it's all hand-spun work that he does, and gives the workers expert guidance on natural dyes and weaves, and he brings out a collection. Uh, his designers bring out a collection for men, women, and children also. And when you wear a Tula garment, you know that you're wearing something very light, light for you, light for the environment. So he works on this cotton value chain, you know, like we have a copyright. So he does not forget all the people in the chain. He gives them their copyright, right? So for one shirt, if his shirt gets sold for say rupees 950, this is what goes back to the people, right? 6% goes to the person from whom he bought the cotton, 14% goes to the spinner, 8% to the dyer, to the weaver, to the designer, for the stitching, to the tailor, for the administration, for R&D, and the margin, margin that he keeps. So this is how the money is distributed. It keeps going back. So a farmer who has once sold his crop, it's not that money will not come back to him ever again, right? In between, whatever gets sold off, out of the profits, there is profit sharing amongst all of them. So that's a very good model. This is a little thing I have. One sec. Tula garments. How do I go to this? Oops. I want to show you this. This Tula garments catalog I wanted to show you, but maybe right now I'm not able to access it. I'll show it to you at the end of the presentation. So then, okay, here we are talking about from this dream of Tula garment and Aushadhi story. Let's come to the banana plant now, the banana fabric. So this we all have heard about banana plant, that it has a pseudo stem. The leaves form into a pseudo stem, and fiber is extracted from those pseudo stems. Hello. So it's a bast fiber, and the lignin and cellulose is removed from it, and then the fiber is extracted from the sheets, and that is used, right? So it grows, banana of course grows abundantly in all these states, and it is similar to bamboo fiber. It is biodegradable, it can be spun. So this is about, you already know about it, so I'll just run through the slide. So to avoid damage, it's better that it's cleaned by hand instead of by machine, but machine process is faster, hand process is slow. So I'll show you to you in pictures. So earlier, the person who is working on this banana fiber, I'll show you further down. Earlier there was this farmer, he used to burn away all his crop, so which was not the right thing to do. So he came to his help, and this is of course the flow chart, how it is done. So they use these pseudo stems are used, opened, sheets are removed, and sheets pass through the machine, and the fiber comes out, right? These men working fiber extraction. This is the work shed. That's how the fiber comes out. Cellulose fiber. These are the products made. Interesting products. Now this Asha Gautam, this sari has been made by this designer Gautam Gupta. This is from a banana fiber, right? Banana fabric. This is the designer working himself with the weaver. He is also into upcycling, right? this designer says that he gets lots of orders for upcycling. People give him his old fabric, old saris, so he upcycles it, using it into, to make maybe accessories like buttons and collars and maybe some, design features on a dress. And he upcycles it and gives it back to the person who gave him the garment. So this is the Almora story, but I want to talk a little more about these guys. Just a sec. So this is from opulence to sustainability, right? So a lot of fashion designers are trying to make a shift from opulence, extravagance to sustainability. So these high-end designers, they are turning to sustainable fashion and tradition, and it is having a trickle-down effect on the people at large. And it also has a trickle-down effect because the weavers and the associated community comes into the forefront. When a garment is sold, it is described who was the weaver who wove its fiber, who was the person who stitched it, right? So all these details get associated with the garment. So there is, so I'm telling you about Gupta, this designer. So there was a Karnataka-based gentleman, Rajshekhar Viru. He used to be weaving and dyeing fabrics, and he started suffering from health issues. And started suffering from health issues, and after about 8-10 years, he had to give up his work. And he used to have banana plantations, and he had to stop doing the dyeing and printing and growing banana plants because it was not very cost effective for him, because he had to um, burn the plants after selling away the bananas. The plants had to be burned down. So in fact, a designer got in touch with him, and he said that, okay, I'll buy your whatever you dump, your banana plantation, what is waste, what you dump, we will extract fiber out of it. So he stopped doing the weaving and dyeing with polyester and synthetic dyes, and he started working with this designer, and his life improved a great deal. They made a handloom weave called khun, which is a traditional weave, and it looks like a Banarsi weave. So they started manufacturing this kind of weave, and this Viru guy, Rajshekhar, he would do the dyeing of the fabric, and then the weaving would be done by the local weavers over there. And so again, the effort was only to go towards a more greener world. So this sustainable shift to sustainable fashion brought in more income to Rajshekhar. It improved his health, and it became an overall a model uh, for the other designers to follow. So his income increased by almost 30%, and his livelihood improved, and his standard of living of his family, that too improved. So this is about the designer. And then this is, I told you about the Almora, the nettle plant also, which is used in extracting fibers, the one that we call Bichu Buti. So somebody made an experiment on this also, the nettle, and fibers were extracted, and again it was used to make designer garments. So this is the method of extracting, like I shared with you a slide on the snake plant. The same method, cellulose is extracted in the same way by retting and scarring and combing and sun drying and washing, right? And then it is treated with some kind of a clay, aluminous minerals it has. So you get a fine fiber from it. And this nettle can be turned into beautiful fabric pieces like here what you see, right? So most of these bast fibers, they give this kind of a fabric which can be dyed in various charming colors and turned into good designer wear. These are some made out of pineapple, sleeves for laptop and all. This is another experiment we did with my student on natural dyes. We extracted dyes from onion peel and from pomegranate rind, from harar, katha, madder, kopak flower, and marigold flowers. They were collected, flowers were collected from the temple. Finally, we worked on this and onion, right? This is harar. So these were collected and dyes were extracted. So after talking about so much of fabric, the dyeing is also important, you know. So you can experiment with things around plants around you, flowers around you. So we optimized various parameters for mordanting. Mordants used were alum and ferrous sulfate. Source of the dye was marigold and onion peel. So parameters were optimized for the amount of dye to be used, amount of mordant, concentration of the mordant, everything was standardized. And I'll show you the beautiful result we got. Of course, the samples that we got, we tested the dyed samples for color fastness, for sunlight, washing, crocking, perspiration, pressing. And then the product was developed. These were the samples developed. These were like with onion, marigold, harar, pomegranate, and kapok, katha, madder. So see how they gave different shades just by changing the mordant and the mordant concentration. And of course, the dye concentration also was changed. So these were the final samples. These are from onion peel, beautiful colors. So the temperature 30 minutes, mordanting time. So this is with ferrous sulfate, different concentrations. This is with mordant, alum with different concentrations. So we can get different shades. These came out of marigold, beautiful shades. These are all self-done. So then we did batik paint, batik dyeing with these dyes. After extracting the dye, batik method. So we got the fabric in 3 shades, right? These were the final products made, you know, stoles and scarves. You can see 3 shades in it. Depending on the design wanted, the batik technique. So wax was applied. This one I won't show you. It won't even work right now. Fabric from coffee bean waste, you heard about this. The designer Gupta I was talking about, he's also worked on coffee bean waste fabric. So this dye is extracted from coffee grounds. So this guy was one time having coffee, sitting in a cafe shop, and he saw a lot of coffee being, you know, served to the customers, and all the dump, you know, waste was being dumped. So he came up with an idea of, you know, people talk about extracting fiber from, you know, cellulosic fiber. How about this? So he spent about 4 years experimenting with extracting of fiber from coffee beans, and now it has become a very popular fabric over the years. Right? Now this is another company which is working for the environment, and they reinvent polymer life cycle. So they have devised ways of polymerizing, depolymerizing textile waste fibers, polyester, especially polyester, and by the use of enzymes. I told you earlier that enzymes are being used to biodegrade plastic fibers. So this is one of the leading companies who's experimenting and working on using enzymes to biodegrade the plastics. So it becomes an environment friendly way of biodegrading them and bringing them back into the cycle. Enzymes, we know that they are sourced from plants or animals. So they are being used now excessively for all the processes. Instead of using chemicals to desize, to scar, to bleach, you know, to degum, etc. For denim fading, they used to use stones for fading. Now they use enzymes. So these are the enzymes which are mostly used. This is that Khund weave that I was talking about, the Banarsi kind of a weave, but it's done in cotton. So this is the local weavers are engaged to work on this. So this designer, in fact, Vaishali, she uses the weavers themselves, the community, the local community she uses to model her clothes, you know, to for the domestic market, right? So this is her who is working on Khun, Karnataka weave, which looks like Banarsi, Vaishali. Now,
Excuse me,
a lot of,
Dr. Rita?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, ma'am, we have the next speaker waiting. He has to start at 11:30. So if you can conclude, we
Okay.
can have a 10 minutes break.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'll just, I'm done actually. So this is about recycling, upcycling, repurposing, right? Thrift stores where a lot of second-hand clothing is sold. So people are warming up to the idea of buying second-hand clothing. Earlier, they had some kind of beliefs that no, we cannot buy second-hand. It's been used by somebody. But especially during the COVID times, this practice really, it started being practiced a lot more. So it is getting popular. So ThreadUp is one store which sells, it's a thrift store. And renting clothes is another way of keeping the garments in use for elongating their life, right? This also I wanted to show, but it won't open. I'll try to. Okay, this is a recent ad I came across by Raymond. I was really impressed by it. So the ad said that you can now look good by doing good. Joy begets joy, as the saying goes. And when you experience the joy of giving your pre-owned clothes, we experience the joy of giving gift vouchers. So you give them your pre-owned clothes and they give you some discount or the gift voucher. You can buy, you can take, they'll knock off some amount from what you're buying. We don't want to see such ads, right? Like turn your dream staycation into reality now or never. This is the line that caught me. Now or never deals. We are not to be swayed by this. We are to be swayed by this. And then everyone has some good ideas. Everyone. Just go deeper into your ideas. Hold those thoughts, raise questions, and get into some action research for your own environment. So, and be that pebble in the pond that creates a ripple for change, right? And now we come full circle. We started from the butterfly effect, right? You can make a difference. And yes, you can, just like the pebble in the pond. I think that's over now. Yeah. So
Thank
that
you
is
so
it.
much, Dr. Rita. Thank you so much for such a beautiful insight into cleaner technologies for textile materials. We are really obliged that you spared time for us, ma'am. And now we can have any questions regarding the presentation. Anybody has any questions?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to take up some questions.
Yeah. I'll check the chat box also.
Where is the chat box? Okay, yeah.
I'll check it, ma'am. I'll check it.
Yeah.
So you can come up with your questions, participants.
It'll be nice to tackle and deal with some questions.
Yeah, okay, ma'am. So I have a question here. What is the work that you are recently carrying on in this area? Like, what type of work is being done recently?
Yeah, Monica. See, number one is the Tigress project I told you about. We are doing recycling and repurposing the old fabric. At the same time, we are going to be giving a source of income generation for the rural women to give them a social identity, right? That is one. And another one, we're going to be working more on natural dyes. I have a new registered candidate who is, searching in this area. So we'll work on natural dyes. Other than that, my initial work was related to extraction of the color from textile dye effluent using activated carbon. So most of my work has been, towards sustainability in some way or the other. I touch that in some way or the other.
So it would include something like saving our heritage textiles also, like working in that arena as well?
I have not gone into heritage textiles, to be honest. I have just gone into, I'm interested in extraction of fiber from various plants, number one, and secondly, natural dyes, and thirdly, repurposing old fabrics.
That's great.
So traditional I haven't gone into yet, but yeah, I can think about it, yeah.
But sustainability, of course, is the mantra these days. Everybody is talking about recycling and sustainable fabrics. So that's a great area that you're working in. And quite a informative and interesting session we had with you. That's one of the participants who's saying that. And thank you so much for sparing your time for us, ma'am. And we are really obliged. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm obliged. Thank you for calling me. Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
It was an excellent session, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Dr. Chai. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Sir, am I audible to you?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, sir, we'll start our session after 5 minutes.
Okay.
At 11:30, according to our Indian time.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, sir.
It's fine.
Okay.